and welcome back to CAS in the Cockpit. In today's episode we're staying in the iconic Sedona airport again to cover one of the most essential skills in aviation, takeoff and landing. I will be flying the legendary Cessna 152 again with a flight instructor on board to walk you step by step through proper procedures, tips and common mistakes to avoid. So fasten your seatbelt, we're going full throttle into episode 2, takeoff and landing. Let's get airborne. Hello everyone and welcome again to CAS in the Cockpit, this time in the episode number 2. Welcome to the part 1 of the episode 2, taxiing. What is this training about? One essential skill before flying in the sky is to taxi an aircraft. A training session dedicated to familiarize you with rolling and steering an aircraft on the ground. Use the rudder pedals to steer the aircraft on the ground, control rolling speed with the throttle and brakes, and taxi to the holding point of the runway and stop the aircraft. We have here the holding line. This line separates the taxiway and the runway. And why is this so important? In real life flights you can only cross this line with permission of the ATC or air traffic control. This is the taxiway, for example in Sedona. The taxiway center line, we have to be lined up in the taxiway center line. This is the runway number that we are holding. In this case is the runway 21 in Sedona. And Alpha 1 is the taxiway location, in this case one of the unique taxiways in the airport. And we will learn how to hold the aircraft, how to stop before crossing to the runway. Welcome to the part 1 of the episode 2. The training duration is about 5 minutes. So now with the engine on, we're gonna release the parking brake so we can move on the ground. So we have to taxi in this taxiway over here. So to start moving the aircraft, I'm gonna put some power here with the throttle. And I'm gonna turn to the left with the rudder pedal. We have to turn then to the right side and enter the taxiway. Over there, and then again with the rudder pedal we turn to the left side. As you can see, we don't need more power, so the throttle is in the idle position and we are already on the taxiway. We'll put some power to continue taxiing. We're gonna test the brakes with the rudder pedals also. And we stop.
Taxi to the next exit and come to a stop. Remember to control your speed with throttle and brakes. See the crossing in front of us? Stop before it as if traffic was coming on the runway.
Alright, so now you know, to the left, and turn to the right. To stop with the brakes, both roller pedals, and here's the power for moving the aircraft. So we're gonna taxi to the stop point only 0.08 nautical miles away, and then stop with the brakes. Stop power. And keeping lined up with the center line of the taxiway. That is basically the principle of taxiing the aircraft. Keeping the center line, steering with the pedals to the left or to the right, and putting more or less power as needed while taxiing. Everything is controlled with the throttle, the pedals, and the brake of the rudder pedals also. We are getting close to the stop, so no more power needed, I think. And if we need more power, we adjust a little bit more, as you can see in the throttle right now. Alright, no more power, and then when we reach this square, we're gonna stop with the brakes of the pedals. Alright.
Taxi the holding point Alpha 1X is at the far end of the airport near the head of runway 21. Stay as close as possible to the taxiway center marked by the yellow line and watch your speeding.
Alright. We have to taxi right now before takeoff to the holding point Alpha 1 before entering the runway 21 of the airport. So we're gonna apply power again, and we're gonna keep the aircraft center in the center line with the pedals again. Right, we have power already, and we're gonna keep the center line steering to the left or right. When we are taxiing so fast, for example, the thing we have to do is to put the throttle in the idle position, so we don't need more power. And if we continue taxiing too fast, we can apply the brakes a little bit to reduce the speed of the aircraft. In this case, a Cessna 152, I only put the throttle back to idle and wait to the aircraft for reduce the speed. And then if I need more power for the taxi, I apply again power with the throttle, while keeping the center line with the rudder pedals. So we're approaching the holding point Alpha 1. The flight instructor already gave the permission us to taxi until the holding point, so we don't have permission yet. Exactly, we don't have permission yet to cross to the runway for the takeoff. So we have to stop in the holding point Alpha 1 before crossing the runway, and you will see the line I told you before that separates this taxiway, where we currently are, to the runway for takeoff or landing. We're turning to the right, and then we're gonna put some brakes here and stop over here. Hello everyone, and welcome again to the part 2 of this second episode of the season 1 of CAS in the Cockpit. Probably one of the most exciting parts of an episode in this season, the takeoff. As you can see here, we're gonna learn how to take off, and the training is about takeoff. yeah, there's nothing like the thrill of taking flight. A training session dedicated to getting you off the ground, and we're gonna taxi into position on the runway, line up the aircraft, then we will accelerate to 55 knots before pitching up to takeoff. That's called the rotation of the aircraft when we get off. And then while climbing in the air, we're gonna maintain 75 knots while climbing to safety altitude of 5,500 feet. This training duration is 4 minutes. And yeah, welcome to the tutorial for takeoff in the Cessna 152.
There's that old saying I like. A mile of road will take you a mile. A mile of runway will take you anywhere. Taking off isn't hard, but there are a few key points to remember. First, we always take off into the wind, which won't be an issue on a calm day like today. Second, before we enter our runway, always make sure it's clear. Check to the right to see if your vehicle is on the runway, and to the left to make sure no other planes are approaching.
So we're looking to the right, no vehicles on the runway, and then we look to the left, no vehicles approaching.
Looks good, no cross traffic. Go ahead and taxi into position.
So again,
Now slowly taxi onto the runway and align the plane with the center line. Then stop your plane just after the number 21.
so again, I'm gonna release here the parking brake so we can move the aircraft. And I'm gonna put some power, a little bit, to start taxiing and line up the aircraft on the runway 21.
Let's position the plane for takeoff.
We're moving already. Enough power. Then we turn to the right and line up the aircraft to get ready for takeoff. Right now we turn to the right with the pedals. Slightly. We'll increase power if needed. So we are now getting to the stop point. I'm gonna line up the aircraft, center line, and let's stop over here.
Excellent. Alright, let's do this. The flight will power and I'll walk you through the takeoff as we go.
Alright, we are going to take off. So we are lined up, center line of the runway. The brakes are released, and we're gonna put full power and wait until we reach the takeoff speed.
Push your runners to stay on the center line.
And we're gonna keep the center line with the pedals. If you look at my feet, I am moving the pedals to keep the center line. And we're gonna wait until we reach 55 knots.
Good. Now gently pull back on the yoke.
We pull back.
And we're airborne.
We are airborne. Now we have to maintain 75 knots
Place on the top of your instrument pad.
while climbing to the
Above the horizon.
5,500 feet.
Focus on flying
So,
straight.
here we have 70 knots, and
75 knots, and we'll reach our target altitude of 5,500 feet in no time.
alright. So we're maintaining here 75 knots of speed, that's good. We are maintaining heading 210, you can see, heading 210 approximately. We're going to, alright, 210 degrees, and we are climbing right now. You can see 5 degrees for climbing and reaching the 5,500 feet. We are nearly there. welcome to the part 3 of episode 2 of CAS in the Cockpit. The part 3 is called Dead Stick Landing. The training of today is we will be placed in conditions that will allow us to focus on using the yoke only to land the aircraft. So the most important thing here is to manage the speed and glide path on the final approach to the runway, then flare the aircraft to touch down smoothly, and then we have to brake after landing to end the flight safely. Training duration is about 4 minutes, and we will keep approximately a speed of 65 knots while descending in the final approach to the runway. The idea is to line up the nose of the plane with the end of the runway and then brake after landing. Very welcome.
For this landing exercise, I want you to focus on the yoke only. You're close enough to the runway to land safely without adding any throttle. Maintain a speed of around 65 knots. Pitch down if you're going too slow. Pitch up if you're too fast.
So we are now maintaining 65 knots. Here is our speed. And then we're gonna align the runway with the aircraft. Before touchdown we have to flare the aircraft so we can expect a very smooth landing with that.
It's time to flare. Flare.
After landing, we're gonna put the brakes with the rudder pedals and keep the center line also with the rudder pedals. So right now we're gonna line up with the runway, doing the center line, and then I'm going to flare the aircraft. And pulling back with the yoke, touchdown, and I apply the brakes with the rudder pedals and keep the center line. With the 2 pedals. Very welcome to the part 4 of the episode 2, Landing Without Elevator. This is probably one of the most difficult challenge for me as a non-licensed pilot with the Cessna 152. The training consists in we will be placed in conditions that will allow us to focus on the throttle. Do you remember the throttle is the power? To manage the glide path on the final approach to land. We already did the landing with the final approach, moving the yoke and controlling the airspeed. And the throttle was in the idle position because we had to maintain 65 knots. But the main points of this exercise is to manage the glide path on the final approach only with the throttle. Then flare the aircraft to touch down smoothly, and then brake after landing to end the flight with the rudder pedals. This training is about 4 minutes, and as you can see here, aiming point the runway threshold over here, and if we are too high we have to reduce the throttle so the aircraft doesn't have power to maintain the flight level, and we have to descend. The aircraft has to descend. If we are too low, we add power with the throttle, and then the aircraft has power and has to climb a little bit to maintain the glide path on the final approach to land. So we have no elevator, we cannot control the aircraft, the climb or descent with the yoke, only increasing or decreasing power. Very welcome to the training.
In this landing exercise,
have no elevator at this moment. I have only the throttle and the option to move the yoke to the left and to the right to move the aircraft. But I have no elevator, so I want to keep the light pad only controlling the power. So doing small corrections.
Now you can use the elevator to land.
Right now we have the elevator, as you can see. I can move to the right, to the left, down and up. So I'm gonna control 60 knots and then start flaring the aircraft before the touchdown area and then apply the brakes after touchdown. Okay, throttle goes to idle and then I will start flaring. Alright, brakes. And then we stop full. And that was it. Very welcome to the part 5 of the episode 2, landing. We already did some exercises in possible situations for landing, and we learned a little bit about the final approach. But in this lesson, in this part 5 of the episode 2, we're gonna do the landing tutorial. The normal landing with the Cessna 152. Training of today is what goes up must come down, as you know, and in this training session you will focus on the key techniques for successful landings. What a normal pilot will do with the Cessna 152. What a pilot would do with the Cessna 152 in a normal situation. So we have to manage the speed and glide path on the final approach before touching down, then flare the aircraft to touch down smoothly, and then brake after landing to enter flight safely. So we are here, we will start here in the final approach phase, descending to the runway, maintaining for example 65 knots with the throttle in the idle position or already with no power applied to maintain the same airspeed. Then we have the runway threshold power reduction start. We start to reduce the power, and then when we are over the runway, the throttle will be in the idle position, no more power for the aircraft, and in the end point we're gonna start the flaring. Flare and deceleration in flight. Throttle to idle, no more power, and flaring we pull on the yoke and then the rear wheels touch point. So we are descending and then flare the aircraft, and then these gears, the two main gears, touch the ground first and then the gear on the front. After the touchdown, ground deceleration. We put the brakes, we apply the brakes with the rudder pedals to stop the aircraft, and then with the rudder pedals also we keep the center line of the runway. Very welcome to the training.
The first instruction used to say, the best part of flying is landing in one piece. Then you're in charge of bringing us in for a safe landing. And I've already set us up in landing configuration at 65 knots, 3 idle hour. Keep your aim points on the runway first. When you're 10 feet above the runway, it's time to flare.
Alright, so we are maintaining 65 knots, not much power already, and we are lined up with the runway. So we will keep descending while being lined up with the runway. That's the final approach. And then we have to look at those lights. we're already at 70 knots. We will keep 65 over there. We have to look at those 4 lights. Those lights are called puppy lights. The puppy lights will show us if we are too high or too low. In this case we can see 3 red lights and 1 white light. That means we are a little bit too low. So we will maintain the flight level and put some power to maintain the 65 knots and wait until we see 2 whites and 2 red. That's the idea of the puppy lights. Alright, there are 2 whites, 2 reds. We are in the right glide path to the runway, maintaining 65 knots over there. The idea is to have 2 whites and 2 reds always while descending on the final approach to the runway. We're gonna land already align with the runway. Okay, center line inside, 65 knots, 2 red, 2 white. Puppy lights are working very nice for us. Alright, now we're a little bit too low. That's the perfect altitude. Then throttle to idle, normal, no more power, and then flare the aircraft for a smooth landing. There we are. Then we apply the brakes with the pedals. And that's how we land a Cessna 152. Very welcome to the part 6 of the episode 2, Downwind. This training session covers the procedures to be performed from downwind leg to the final approach. Once established in downwind along the runway 21 of Sedona Airport at 6,000 feet, in this exercise, start to prepare for the landing by reducing the speed to 80 knots and set 10 degrees of flaps. A good distance from the runway is a gliding distance. You can judge by seeing the runway from the cockpit at about half the stud under the wing. When turning to the base leg, reduce the power and maintain the attitude to fly at 65 knots, final approach, and then when turning to the final approach, over here, turn to final. We keep maintaining 65 knots and follow the glide slope, the final approach, and use the power or the flaps as required to adjust the slope. Then flare, land and brake close to the runway center line. So those are the instructions for this exercise, this part of the episode. We will appear here and we're gonna demonstrate how to work with the downwind and then final approach and landing. So we will appear here, that's the downwind, and then we will be at 80 knots with flap in 10 degrees. What are the flaps? The flaps are this part of the wing, in the left wing and the right wing, and the flaps have different configurations. So what are the flaps? Because here in the downwind we have to keep 80 knots and flap in 10 degrees. The flaps are this part of the wings, here in the left wing and here on the right wing. The Cessna 152 is equipped with manually operated flaps that extend up to 30 degrees. Flaps increase the wing's lift and drag, allowing for slower, more controlled takeoffs and landings. Typically for takeoff we use 10 degrees, like here, which helps us to lift off sooner without creating too much drag. So if we put more flaps, we can lift off with less speed. If we don't put flaps in the aircraft, we will need more speed, a lot of more speed to take off, or for landing too. For landing, we gradually extend the flaps to 20 or 30 degrees. It depends. It depends on the approach, basically. This steepens our descent path and lets us land at slower airspeed. Remember, always retract flaps smoothly after takeoff to avoid a sudden loss of lift. So, we are now not going to take off, we are going to land. We're going to work the final approach. So here in the downwind we will put flap in 10 degrees, as you can see here in this image. And then when we are in the final approach close to the landing phase, we're gonna increase the flap degree. We're gonna put flaps 20 or maybe flaps 30. As I told you, if we put more flaps, we need less speed for landing or for takeoff. So the idea is to put the flaps in the full position, in this case Cessna 152 30 degrees, so we can land with a very slow speed and very smoothly. Welcome to the training.
Okay, we're currently flying on the downwind leg at the standard traffic pattern altitude of 6,000 feet. It's a flight path parallel to the landing runway, but in the opposite direction. In downwind, you want to start preparing for landing. That means setting your speed and flaps configuration. Reduce speed to 8 knots. Maintain constant altitude and heading. The flaps provide extra lift at the expense of additional drag. This extra lift allows flying at a lower airspeed. Flaps allow for smoother and shorter landings. Go ahead and extend 10 degrees of flaps.
We're gonna extend 10 degrees of flaps over here. There we are.
We're going to fly past the end of the runway here. Keep going until you see it at a 45-degree angle behind you. That's your cue to turn left onto the next leg.
So we have to reach the end of the downwind over here and then to turn left. We turn left before the final approach.
Turn left onto the main
And
leg.
we start to turn to the left with a maximum of 30 degrees. This notch over here. Turning to the left, to the base leg. Over there.
Try to maintain 1400 RPM. That'll keep our speed around
We put the
65
throttle in idle until we reach 1.4 for the RPM and try to maintain
Turn left onto final.
the 65 knots while turning to the right for the final approach, turning to the left
And your left turn onto final.
to the runway. There it is. We put the flaps in 30.
Stabilize your approach and prepare for landing.
We align with the runway, maintain 65 knots, and then we try to reach the 2 red lights and 2 white lights, the happy lights, and we try to keep the 65 knots, so over there, and keep the center line. two reds, two white lights, happy lights, and then idle, no more power, and we flare the aircraft slowly. Touchdown,
Apply the brakes and stop the plane.
and we apply the brakes with the pedals to stop the aircraft.
That was a perfect traffic pattern execution. Well done.
And very welcome to the last part of the episode 2 of CAS in the Cockpit. First solo flight. As the name already says it, this is our first flight flying solo. We've trained for this, now it's time to show off our skills and a complete standard traffic pattern without assistance from the instructor. We're alone in this one. We're alone in this one, and the idea is to take off and climb at 75 knots until we reach 5,400 feet at this point after takeoff. Then we will turn to the left to the crosswind leg, maintaining the 75 knots at 5,400 feet. Then once established in downwind leg, after the crosswind turning to the left, we expect 80 knots and 6,000 feet, a little bit higher and a little bit faster also. And then we will start to prepare for the landing by setting the speed to 80 knots and extend 10 degrees of flaps. Then we enter base leg and prepare the aircraft for landing. After that, when turning to the final approach over here in final, we keep maintaining 65 knots and follow the glide slope, and then we use the power or the flaps as required to adjust the slope. After that, maintaining the glide slope and alignment, keeping the center line of the runway, we flare the aircraft, pulling on the yoke, expecting a smooth land, and after landing we brake. We apply the brake with the rudder pedals, steering the aircraft, keeping the center line with the pedals also, and then we brake close to the runway center line, and that will be the end of our first solo flight. We don't have help of the flight instructor, we are alone, so let's see what happens. Very welcome to the tutorial for the first solo flight.
It's time, your first solo flight. I'll watch you from the ground and make no contact. Let something else go. Your goal is to complete Sedona's left-hand traffic pattern on your own. Remember what we covered in our previous session? Don't fly. But, see you on the other side.
Alright, let's begin the first solo flight. We are in the Cessna 152, and I am going to show you what we have to do. The first thing, we have to take off. Those are the flaps. I'm gonna do a quick review before takeoff. We steer the aircraft on the ground with the rudder pedals to the left and to the right, so we can keep the center line while taking off. And we turn to the left and to the right in the air, moving the yoke to the left and to the right. You can see here on the wing. And here, those are the flaps. Right now, the flaps are in the up position. For takeoff, we do not use the full flaps position, in this case 30 degrees. That is for landing. We need 10 degrees of flaps, so we're gonna adjust to the 10 degree position and see what happens once we put the wing flaps in the 10 degrees position. see that the flaps have deployed to the 10-degree position, and now we are ready for takeoff. Flaps 10 degrees, throttle idle, parking brake is released. We can now move, and we have to apply full power and then pull on the yoke for takeoff. So we are ready. Let's see how we will do on this solo flight. So full power, and then we're gonna take off. We rotate, lift off when we reach 55 knots. Over here. Rotate. So we have to put the flaps up, and now we are gaining speed. Wait until 75 knots, and we have to climb to 5,700 feet and reach the end of the upwind leg, 2 miles approximately. We are now 5,000 feet. 70 knots, and there we are, 75 knots. Climbing to 5,700 to reach the end of the upwind leg. Five degrees climbing, heading 210, no turns at the moment. Flaps are up, as you can see. Very nice takeoff. So 5,500, only 200 feet more. Alright, we are fast in the 5,700. Now we will turn to the left. We start turning to the left, maximum of 30 degrees, to the crosswind leg. There we are, turning to the left, on the yoke. Back to idle. That we maintain 70 knots again and reach 6,000 feet with not only 200 feet more, and then reach the end of the crosswind leg, or crosswind leg. Now we turn left to the downwind leg, also maintaining 6,000 feet. And turning to the left, to the downwind. There we are. We are now maintaining 6,000 feet, so we can reduce the power with the throttle over here to maintain 80 knots only, while maintaining 6,000 feet. There we are, 80 knots, 6,000, flying directly to the heading 030 to the end of the downwind leg, 3 miles away. Descending a little bit, climb again to 6,000, there we are. There we are. We're already in the middle of the flight. There is the runway. I will adjust the trim wheel as we learned, so I can lift the yoke a little bit. Alright, there we are. At this moment we are leveled up and I am not having the yoke at my hand. I left the yoke and we are leveled up thanks to the trim wheel. So right now we extend the flaps to 10 degrees again. There we are, flaps 10 degrees. And now we have to adjust again the trim wheel because of the flaps. More power for the 80 knots. Ready for the final approach in Sedona. Reaching the 80 knots. There we are. 6,080 knots. Reaching the end of the downwind leg. And then we are ready to turn to the left for the final approach to the base leg. Right now we turn to the base leg, 30 degrees to the left, maintaining 6,000 feet. There we are. Throttle to idle, no more power until we reach 65 knots, and then we are ready to turn final for landing runway 21 Sedona Airport. Right now turn to the left to the final approach, flaps 30. There we are. The flaps are in the 30 degrees position. We maintain 65 knots and then line up with the runway. There we are. And we keep maintaining 65 knots and then back to idle, no more power, and then we flare the aircraft pulling on the yoke. Sorry, and then touchdown. There we are. Alright, we look for the puppy lights, 2 reds, 2 whites. There we are. Throttle in idle, no more power. Then we start flaring the aircraft. We're smoothly landing. There we are. We apply the brakes with the pedals to stop the aircraft. And that was it. And that wraps up episode 2 of CAS in the Cockpit. I hope this breakdown of takeoffs and landings in the Cessna 152 helps you become a more confident virtual pilot. If you learned something today, consider subscribing or like the video. And don't forget to check out episode number 3, VFR Navigation, in the next time. Thanks for flying with me, and remember, see you on the next flight. Captain Wohlwend signing off. Goodbye.